I'm Bill Oughton of Oughton Claims Management.
I'm Chantal Roberts of CMR Consulting, and welcome to the Art of Adjusting podcast.
Today, we're going to talk about life as an insurance adjuster from the perspective of property, auto, liability, or workers' compensation adjusters. Our goal is to bring interesting topics in the world of claims adjusting to people who are working as an adjuster now and to people who are considering a career as a claims adjuster.
Good morning, Heather.
Good morning.
How are you? You're like all sunny and everything,
I
with the
know,
sun
like
shining on you.
I have this gorgeous new window in front of where my desk is at in our new house. And of course, about this time of day, I can open the curtains. Otherwise, the sun's like
Oh,
shining
very.
in my face and I can't even see my computer screen. But right
Oh,
now, perfect time.
so did I tell you about this prank that I pulled on my husband that ended up backfiring on me, which is usually what happens to all of my pranks, right?
Yes.
So I don't know what got into me, but his office is down in the basement and it happens to face east. And usually what he'll do is he'll put up a piece of cardboard box, kind of like what you do with the blinds, and or until the sun happens to pass over. Well, in the spring, I just decided, with this window well, I'm going to plant a little garden, and he's just going to hate that, but I'm going to do it, right? And it's going to die in the winter because it's not that deep underground and blah blah blah. And
Yeah.
so I did it, and I swear it has like taken off. Well, he has two windows, the one that fits the sun, which is now completely covering the window, and the other one, which is off to the side, which is in the shade. And he says to me, can you go get some more plants and like plant the more things there? I'm like, what? It was supposed to annoy you. I was going to put fairy lights in there, little gnomes and everything. And he goes, no, I actually really like it.
Oh my gosh,
But
that's fantastic.
I know, right?
I am
Nothing.
living in a place that doesn't have basements anymore. So but
So,
I do have gorgeous sun coming through the window.
well, that's good. So nothing to do with claims or what we're going to be talking about today, which is experts. But I just you said sun, and that's it reminded me.
Yeah.
It reminded me.
Oh, experts. What are we gonna chat on about experts? Because I think we're kind of we're experts,
We
right?
are experts. Like we are such experts right now. I mean, like we just should talk about ourselves all day long, which
Yeah.
is so hard for me. I mean, oh my God.
Oh,
Okay. But what I was thinking of is specifically those people who maybe have some kind of specialized knowledge or additional education. And I actually read this, and I'm not going to be able to say it verbatim, but I thought it was pretty a pretty good observation. And it was something to the effect of nowadays everybody thinks that they are experts because they can do just a little bit of research. And we actually need to realize that we aren't experts. For example, I am not an expert in uh, microbiology. I can read an article about it, but that doesn't mean that I'm an expert in microbiology. I need to defer to people who have gone to school and majored in biology and then, minored in microbiology and then gotten their master's degree in chemistry or something like that and then gotten a PhD and yada, yada, yada. I need to defer to those people. And those are going to be the experts. Now, I can then take what they say and apply it to my case, whatever that case may be, like, oh, I'm not going to eat cheese now or whatever. But that's how we use experts. And I think that's the best way that I can describe what an expert is someone with some kind of superior knowledge in something that we use.
definitely. I always thought like it was like YouTube and TikTok videos and all of that. Like even if you just read X, like you should be an expert, right?
Right? I mean, because if it's on the internets, it's true.
On the internet, it's true
If it's
because
on the internets, it is true. It,
Abraham Lincoln said it there.
exactly.
So No, I've always thought of when I lived in the claims world, I always thought of like I have a football analogy because it's almost, it's football season
It
right
is,
now. And
yes.
I'm way into college football, but the experts that you may be bringing alongside are like somebody that you might be handing the ball off to. Like they're like the running back or like they're the receiver at some point in the game of football. Because you're handing it to them for a moment, but then they're going to eventually hand it back to you because you're the quarterback of that game, right? You're the quarterback. If you're the claim handler, you're the quarterback of the game.
I love that.
So they are somebody that you're going to hand it off to, and they're going to make some progress with it. And then they're going to bring that back to you so that you can move everything forward. But they have specialized training, specialized expertise in being that said receiver or
Mm,
running back or fullback or tight end or whatever that they are when it comes to the players within the football game. They have spent time, effort, training, education to be able to become what they are in that role that they're playing.
yes.
So giving it to them for that moment is an assist for you to be able to move that the playing field forward when it comes to your game. So I think that was a pretty profound analogy there. What do
I
you
love
think?
it. I actually love it. I think that makes a great deal of sense because as much as I do love Barton Keyes, if you've never seen if Double Indemnity, it's a film noir. Uh, the main character is a sales agent, but the I guess one of the supporting characters is Barton Keyes. He's the claims manager and actually the only adjuster. But he has this great little monologue about what a claims adjuster is. You know, we're the father confessor, we're the surgeon, we're the scalpel, we are basically everything. We have to know a little bit. And I call that the Renaissance man kind of deal, where we have to know a little bit of everything to be
Mhm.
able to do our job. But we can't know everything, can we? And
No.
that's why we do have to hand it off. And if you think about it, this is very normal in claims handling. If we're a desk adjuster, we often hand it off to a field adjuster to do the inspection or the field adjuster to maybe do a locus investigation,
Mhm.
or the SIU department to research fraud.
Yeah.
Maybe we have someone doing the med pay if we're doing auto or something to that effect. So it's very normal for us in claims to hand things off, but then it comes back to the main adjuster who's handling all of it. So I loved that. It's very good. And why would you say? Well, I guess we just did that. The experts exist in claims.
Claims are 100% about like applying a set of facts or determining a set of circumstances that have happened to someone. But sometimes those facts need interpretation that's beyond your area of expertise. And just like you said, like you have to know a lot to be a claims professional. You have to have a lot of different hats that you put on, but you also have to know what when you don't know something and don't try to make like just educated what you're calling an educated guess about things
Yes.
to be able uh, to influence your ability to know when there's that moment like I don't have the expertise to be able to determine the causation of this loss.
Hmm.
I don't have it. And I can't figure it out just by all the facts that are in front of me right now. And that's where you're going to call in that assist. That's the moment where you might bring somebody to the table. What are some other times that you know that you've had to call in some of those types of experts,
I
Chantel?
think, yeah, the main ones that I see, even as a claims handling expert witness kind of deal. Of course, I'm getting called in when there's a bad faith claim to sit
Yeah.
there and look at a claim and say, yes, it's been handled within the Unfair Claims Settlement Practice Act, which we both talked about, you and I, or no, it hasn't. Y'all need to settle.
Yeah.
Y'all need to settle, or they did a good job and you need to drop the suit, depending on who's retained me. It's not always the defense counsel who's retained me. But The when I was an adjuster, when I would normally see this or want to retain an expert would be, of course, when there's a fire over like perhaps a certain amount, 100,000 something dollars, or a suspicious fire. All of a sudden the fire burst out in the middle of the floor where there's no electrical, and the electricity is off. And we don't know how the fire started, and they're behind on the mortgage payments. Well, I'm probably going to want to get an origin and cause expert out on that. But honestly, I think some of the most frequently used ones are the engineers.
Mhm.
How did this pipe burst? Uh, what do you think the cause of loss is? The insured public adjuster says it's XYZ. I think, or my independent adjuster, or my field adjuster, even if it's not independent, says that it's ABC, not XYZ. So can you tell me which one it is? Because look, I don't care. I just want to pay the claim and get it closed.
Yeah.
Or I need to deny the claim and get it closed. I mean, it sometimes we don't settle or we don't pay things, unfortunately, which is not always what the insured wants to hear. But so I think those are the main times that I saw something is when I said that it was something and the insured would say, no, that's not right. I think it's something else. And I would send someone with a slightly higher degree of education than I
Yeah.
in to give me, this is what I think, one way
And
or the
and
other.
I will tell you, like one of the pitfalls that I always saw some people fall into a lot is like we're going to get into a dispute
Mm,
and not recognizing proactively that you really need that expertise. And that
yes,
often leads to the dispute, right? Is not knowing. So I think you have to know that there's a big difference in between the judgment that you have as an adjuster and that moment that you need the specialized expertise that can help and it isn't just there to help you to like bail you out when you suddenly came to the tension point of we're fighting about something in the claim or there's some adversarial stuff that's going on. Because I can tell and this is just from what I've heard from experts and what I've heard from other people, that puts them behind the eight ball and also is very difficult for them as a professional
hmm,
when it's automatically like they're just called in on the dispute side of it versus we're trying to proactively figure this out and we recognize the need for the expert at the right moment. And I know that's hard. Like it's hard to know that exact right moment to bring them in,
it
you
is
know.
hard. And I would say nine times out of 10, experts are always brought in when there's a dispute.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I would say this to any adjusters that are listening, and even if there's an agent or two that are listening, maybe gently suggest it to your agent or to your adjuster that if tensions are rising, this might be a good time to get an expert in because it might be a face-saving way for you as the adjuster to either say, see, I was right, there's someone else who believes me, or oh my gosh, I'm wrong, thank you for pointing this out, which I mean a lot of people don't do, but it could be a very face-saving method. I'll give you a little story. It, I have had so many claims go to mediation
Mhm.
where the plaintiff attorney may have oversold the case to the claimant. This is third party claimant, a liability claim or something like that. Or simply the third or the plaintiff attorney doesn't have control over her client and they think they're going to get $50 billion for a rear end accident of that has property damage of $500 or something like that, and it helps to have that third party, that mediator, spend some time with the layperson or the consumer and say, hey, this is really what's going on and this is what you need to expect and blah blah blah. And I know that's not what necessarily the expert does for if they were on the roof or anything like that. But also, ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you this side note. Give the expert report. It may not be your company's procedure to do that. I would talk to your boss naturally, but I'm going to tell you they're going to get it in discovery.
Hmm.
So you might as well do it, and that's your argument. We might as well do it because if they sue us, they're going to get it. So just give it. But anyway, my point is that this might be a nice way for you to resolve the issue
Yeah,
and not get entrenched.
yeah,
And because what happens if you're wrong?
I
You
know.
just, I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You're
And
embarrassed. You know
well,
what? If you're going to do this every time you're embarrassed, seriously, I mean, I mean, you don't even need to be leaving the house,
no, the
which I
reality of
guess we should. None of us are nowadays. We're working from home, but you know what I mean.
yeah, set the ego aside when it
Exactly.
comes to that because like again like we said just a moment ago, you don't know everything as an adjuster, and that's okay that
Mm,
you don't, right?
yes.
But what you need to have is a keen eye for the moments when you need to have some outside expertise. Also, they have a different set of eyes than you, and they have a different set of skill sets than you have as a professional. And you might have seen, I don't care how long you've been in the industry. If you've been in the industry for 25 years, there are still probably things that you have not seen because we're talking about human error and issues that happen.
Yes.
So be aware of those, the right moments, and the really savvy adjusters that are out there are the ones that can sit down and go, yeah, I know, like here, I'm looking at this file and I'm already thinking about there's a need for me to have these types of people potentially involved because there is a set of disputed facts on causation, or something comes in the door where you're going, well, I'm not quite sure what actually happened here just by looking at this or my eyeball for the moment
Hmm.
on it. That's that whole differentiation in between your judgment capabilities and needing the specialized expertise that's beyond the knowledge that you have.
And I love what you're saying is that you're seeing things at the beginning of the claim. And I think that sometimes this is what is going to separate the good adjusters, the ones that get promoted, the ones that make the climb up into the system. And I'm still looking for that CEO that's a claims adjuster who actually knows what a claim is, other than when their Lamborghini gets keyed or whatever. Not that I'm bitter, but yeah, no, not an MBA. As Heather is an MBA, but whatever. I
Yeah.
digress. I digress. But no, you're absolutely right. Knowing that, and of course, it does come with time and everything. And I think that there are again certain things that you can look at when you are looking at a first notice of loss. For example, fire started in the middle of the living room. The electricity is off. The house is vacant. Well, if you don't have squatters, you know, and right now you
Or meth cookers.
or meth cookers, you,
Yeah.
and you right now you don't know that the insured is behind because that's going to be a recorded statement.
Yeah.
That's going to be a recorded statement that you find that out. This is where you probably want to go ahead and have your field adjuster and an origin and cause expert go out there at the same time and do a little, investigation on things. So maybe that's what you want to do. Um, then same thing with I don't know, your medical. If we're talking about um, a low impact claim, and now the first notice of loss, and the claimant is like, oh my gosh, I went to the hospital, I've had 3 MRIs already, and we're 3 days into the loss. There might be something that we want to take a look at. Uh,
Yeah, and you are not an expert. I mean, you've probably gotten some training. There's this word out there in the field for bodily injury, like biomechanics of motor vehicle accidents, and like how they happen and what happens to the body. And there's probably a ton of training that you get if you sit in that role because you're charged with evaluating bodily injury claims and compensation for that.
Hmm.
But you're not 100% an expert in how the biophysics and biomechanical physics of the body operates. So you probably need some help figuring that out so that you can make sure that you're paying the right amount for the claim. It's not about, like you set out with the mindset always, when, especially when you're talking about unfair claim settlement practices, which I know we've harped and preached on this. You're not setting out with the mindset to deny the claim. You're setting out with the mindset of, let me find the coverage that's necessary and let me find the right evaluation for this loss.
And
You know,
you mentioned something that's really, really interesting. I'm going to tell you, medical doctors aren't even the quote expert end quote for biomechanics.
yeah,
They are experts for whatever field they're in, emergency medicine, general practice, neurology,
cancer doctors, all those
yes,
other
all of
things.
these kind of things. And so they all go to the same 4 years before they go on to the same, to their own expert? Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like when we all go to college. Do we all have the same 2 years? The first 2 years, do we all take English lit, American lit, intro to calculus, blah, blah, blah? Not
Yeah.
me, because I went to Baylor and they allowed liberal arts majors to take logic rather than math. And I signed up for that because I didn't want to do anything with math. But it was a lot of fun. Regardless, I digress again. Anyway, but yes, you see what I'm saying. It's like we all have the same kind of education, but that doesn't mean that I'm a mathematician because I can't add 8 plus 7. Okay, great. I'm going to assign these things over when we're talking about like a business interruption loss to someone like Scott Margraves, or because he's an expert in that, isn't he? No, I just got his name. He's the COI. He's
Yeah.
the certificate of insurance guy. Sorry, but anyway, I'm going to assign it over to an expert for Scott Bushnell. That's his name.
There we
He's
go.
that's the one.
Another Scott.
It's a Scott, okay? Just look, find a Scott, Google Scott, and I mean, there you go. That's you'll have it. Whatever. You know what I mean. Anyway, that I really like that idea. I love what you had said about that. That's very good.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of different types of experts
Hmm.
that you might routinely interact with
Hmm.
in your adjuster role. And so that's why I think it's very important because we are living in this world where there's so much more virtual handling of claims.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean that there aren't still adjusters who go out and physically inspect properties or physically inspect injury sites and injury locations that happen, but that is less and less frequent with the advent of technology.
Right.
So, knowing the types of experts that are out there that you can reach back into and get assistance with is really important. And it's also very important if that you know what experts go with, maybe the type of line of business that you
Hmm.
work, because
Hmm.
personal lines might be a little bit different than commercial lines, and some of the specialty lines that are out there, and excess and surplus as well, because there's people that work claims all the way across, like
Yes.
all those different types of things. And then there's people who are very specialized. But
Yeah.
if you're a typical property person, like you handle property day in and day out, you might have interactions with engineers regularly. Why? Because you need to know causation, like we talked about, code issues. Codes are always really big. And codes
Yes.
have become even more of an issue, I think, lately as well, because the building codes are trying to evolve and adapt because many of them are very outdated, unless you're Florida.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, this is a very, very good point because I'm going to tell you right now, adjusters, just FYI, you may want to go ahead and get an expert or at least talk to your county code people,
mhm,
because I am in a couple of lawsuits as the expert witness,
mhm,
and the code upgrades are really creating a lot of increase in the estimate
mhm,
because it's like out in California with the wildfires or whatever. And so it's like, well, now we need to do more of this kind of rebuilding or whatever. And as an adjuster, look, I'll be honest with you, I used to forget it there, but there is extra, you know, coverage for that up to $25,000 or $50,000 or 25% of blah, blah,
And
blah. I mean, you have to read it, but don't just not give that because, of course, that's when you're going to trigger Unfair Claims Practices Act too.
yeah. And thinking in advance about that and maybe attaching the types of experts that you might need to use in a claim file to like the coverage figure out that's your responsibility 100%. Because your experts are not going to sit in the space of determining the coverage.
No.
They're in the space of helping you to understand the facts and circumstances or the causation of what happens so that you, who sit in the quarterback role, get to make that decision about coverage. They're feeding you more information from their area of expertise. Thank you.
Right. We were talking about what kind of experts with the codes and all of that. And one of the things that I thought was brilliant about you talking about these sorts of things is that as an adjuster, you do need to start thinking about this early and often. And I almost feel one of the things that kind of trips a trigger with insureds is that they feel like we're not paying attention to that kind of stuff because the policy says that it has to be incurred. And there is this whole debate right now in insurance. What does incurred mean? Of course, the insurers, the carriers think that it means we reimburse you. Like you pay for it and send us in, so you incur the cost. Most plaintiff attorneys and public adjusters believe incurred means you suffer the loss. Like the insured has suffered the loss of the building burning down. That means they're going to have the building code upgrades. Therefore, that's why in these kind of public adjuster estimates and everything, you will see the coverage for or the cost for building code upgrades, but you won't on the insurer side. And
wait a minute. So you're telling me that like in insurance claims, like there's disputes about interpretations of words?
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
And a coverage attorney could also be your expert, by the way.
Oh yeah.
A coverage attorney could be your expert, but these kind of things, this is something that you would want just off to the side a little bit, adjusters, to think about. And I always thought it would be a good idea. I don't write estimates. I'm a desk adjuster. But if we did not put this thing that says, code upgrade TBD, to be determined, because I want my insured to see that I'm considering it. I just can't pay it right now because I'm the carrier and I will make you pay it first and then I'm reimbursing you. And that's the difference for the estimates, because I feel sometimes the insured looks at their public adjuster estimate, which may have that charge, and our estimate, and they go, oh, they really are lowballing me. Not necessarily. But you were talking about, again, the engineers. One of the things that's really important to understand is that, again, your engineers, your origin and cause, even, I guess, coverage attorney, weather experts. I don't think these are used often enough, these weather experts, medical experts. None of these people can determine coverage. They can't speak to coverage.
No.
And that is something that you, as the quarterback, you're making the calls. So basically, it's like the coach is running up to you saying, here's the playbook. Which one do you want to do? Of course, the coach wouldn't be doing that, but maybe second stringer. I have no idea. I don't watch football. I'm more of a basketball person. So leave me alone.
No, I would definitely just say I mean, there's such a wide variety of people who have established themselves as subject matter experts because of their background, their training, their technical expertise, and what they went to school for, but also just like the day to day of what they have done for years and years in the job role that they have.
Yes.
But those those types of experts, your expertise needs to lie in, and I think I've said this like a million times already. When do I know that I need to call these people in? We haven't mentioned financial experts
No,
yet.
no.
In the financial expert world, like if you're in that world of handling commercial losses,
Mm,
you probably need to know and understand the moments where you might need to do an evaluation of business interruption
yes.
damages that someone has suffered, because that is a holistically nuanced
Yeah.
type of expertise that involves a lot of math that you
Yes.
and me probably don't like doing.
No, no. But
Yeah,
I'll tell you this, like this is something that is so completely foreign to me, but it's something that is in the financial expert kind of deal is a business can be losing money. It cannot be profitable, but it still has a business interruption claim. And I'm like, what? What? Doesn't make any sense. But I mean, so even though the insured may be like, I don't, I'm negative or whatever,
yeah.
go ahead and send it over to your CPA, the insurer's financial person, to take a look at it. And I'm going to tell you, these commercial claims are usually where you're going to see a lot more of the experts because you've got these huge, I don't know, warehouses or whatever, high rises or what have you, and
Yeah,
that's when you need to get a construction expert in.
yeah.
That construction expert may need to work with the field adjuster to write the estimate
Hmm.
because it's so complicated.
Yeah.
And I will also say, you cannot remember your Unfair Claims Settlement Practices Act. You cannot assign it and forget it. You've got to maintain momentum. So assign it. Of course, let your insured know what's going on, and then follow up in a couple of maybe a week, 7 days, something like that. Like, hey, have you seen it? I know you're writing a report because these guys, they're gals do. Yeah, they're technical. It takes them, 2 or 3 weeks to write a report. Yeah.
And then I'd like to give a huge shout out to like all those in what I call like an unsung hero field of insurance, which is those subrogation adjusters
Oh
out
yeah.
there. Or if you happen to be the day-to-day adjuster who's just handling subrogation as part of the full claim file that you handle for your company, um, folks, subrogation is the moment where we make sure that the right person is paying for the loss because they contributed to, or they had, or they were 100% responsible for paying, for causing the problem that
Yeah.
happened, especially in property damage claims. But it's big time in the injury world as well.
Yes.
Subrogation adjusters, you have a regular familiarity and knowledge of causation experts or failure analysis experts, and those people who can determine like, why in the world did this one electrical component inside of this gigantic generator system that is connected to five others actually fail? And they can point you to the reasoning why and
Mhm.
give you the right details so that you can go, okay, yeah, this was a manufacturer defect, or this was a product failure, or this was something else that contributed to the loss. But they help you to make sure that the dollars that need to come back that have been paid out the door, because let's face it, claims, what do? You're handing
Yep.
the money out the door. They can bring that recovery back and also help to indemnify that insured for their deductible as well,
Yes.
which in the
Yes.
commercial world, especially, those are sometimes gigantic expenses
Huge.
for the
Huge.
insured. So,
Absolutely. My
several
hus
investors, I have your back.
absolutely. And again, all of these things, it is easier and better to get your experts in earlier rather than later. And even that goes with the subro people, because I'm going to tell you this too. The subro people can point you to the right people,
Yeah.
but when you have a potential subrogation issue and you send your expert out there, your subro people are going to want to put the at fault or the possible at fault people on notice because maybe there's destructive testing, or maybe that the at fault carrier needs to assign an expert and they need to have joint inspections. One of the things that I'm particularly thinking of is a case that I was working on. It was unfortunately a fatality with a
Mm.
bicyclist, and he was hit by a car. His he was right. He had a helmet on. My first thought was, of course, as an adjuster rather than a rather than a standards practices and procedures, because it's hard to shake these thoughts once you get into that kind of mentality, is
Yeah.
have we put the manufacturer of the bike helmet on notice?
Hmm.
Because that right there could be the reason why our insured died,
Yeah. Yeah.
is because the
And you don't
helmet
know
wasn't
that.
correct.
Yeah, you don't know that just by looking at the facts or even doing
Mm-mm.
your investigation. There has to
Right,
be much more detailed analysis of all the factors to
right,
even determine like how much did someone contribute to this loss. And
exactly.
when the exposure's high, it's always a good idea to be thinking about that on the front end
Yes.
versus, oh, I'm halfway through the claim. Oh, wait a minute, where's the evidence
Right.
of how this happened? And
Yes.
oh man, we just lost out on like
Yes, because
tons
that is going
of
to just
information.
destroy you in court and
Yep.
all of
That's
this kind of thing.
that word called spoliation.
Yeah, spoliation. And by the way, there's not like there's I always think there's extra eyes in there somewhere, but there's not. Yeah. So there's going to be a spelling bee at the end of today's podcast where we're going to have the word of the day is spoliation. So, anywho,
Notice she didn't say math problems.
oh, thank God. No, because I would not, I would end the podcast early if we had math problems. But look, I cannot tell you how many times, as an expert witness for claims handling, I get called in late. And I know the reason why. And so this is where I need to speak with the adjusters, because I know there's no C-suites people listening on this, because if there were, everything would be changing. But I need you to explain to the bosses that I know everybody's trying to lower the loss adjustment expenses, the LAEs, not to be confused with additional living expenses, ALE, but LAE, loss adjustment expenses, which is why you don't want to call in your experts, either for origin and cause or financial business interruption or engineers or even me. You want the claims handler to be the expert, but you can't be the expert because you're kind of blinded by the trees in the forest. Like you can't see the trees because of the forest. You're seeing the forest, whereas I'm going down and going like, oh yeah, you probably you didn't do this, and this, or oh, you're fine, you did that, and that, you're good. It's always better to have your experts in earlier rather than later.
And I just think it's also I think you cripple your adjusters by
Mm,
having that expectation of them to always sit in that space because they honestly they don't have the training and they don't have the expertise. They have training and expertise in a lot of other things that, but recognizing that and realizing that loss adjustment expenses that are spent towards things that will help to make sure that you're paying the right amount at the right time
yes,
helps you to avoid the bad faith lawsuits, helps you to
absolutely.
avoid the whole idea of, we're being called in for a market conduct exam because of
Mm,
our claim handling that just seems to be sloppy or
yes.
using things at the wrong time or not investigating the way that we should. They're expensive. I get it. Okay. But
But you would
imagine the
rather,
expense on the back end to both
yes,
brand reputation, but also like your ability to be able to write insurance in a particular
yes.
area because like you're putting your adjuster in a place where they shouldn't be. you
Yes.
know.
Trust me on this for any C-suite that's listening, which is absolutely nobody. But you would rather spend $5,000 on me or some other engineer or medical professional or whatever looking at this file than in one file, I have already billed $55,000.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I would love to put myself out of business, and that's actively what I'm trying to do here with this podcast. I am trying to put myself out of business. So also, I mean, for the adjusters, this is why you need to be paying attention and trying to get the engineers involved or the experts involved early and often whenever you see that you have some kind of problem.
Yeah.
It is
And
always going to be worth it.
well, and the proactive piece of it just can't be stressed enough,
Mm.
because not only do you like cripple the case and capability to be able to carry everything out, you cripple the expert when you bring them in too late, you know?
Yes, very true. If we're
Because
under the gun, I can't do a good review.
yeah, it's difficult to be
Hmm.
able to feel that pressure of that. And so again, experts are often involved in dispute situations, even though I said try to get them in before the dispute happens. They're often going to always be involved
Mm, mm.
99.9% of the time in those major dispute situations. How do courts like look at expert testimony? Because I know you sit in that space, Chantel. So
Yeah,
tell us
yeah.
all about it.
So tell us all about it. It's the courts will make sure that your expert is good. There's other words, but just to break it down, good in that particular field. Like, they've got the education, they've got and it's not just education. I mean, have they been writing in it? Do they teach in that field? Because it doesn't necessarily even have to be the education, it could be the experience. For
Yeah.
example, I don't have a master's degree in insurance. I don't have a PhD in insurance or risk management or whatever, but I've been handling claims for 20 some odd years. So that breadth of experience, as well as my teaching, as well as my authorships, gives me the expertise according to the, courts. Okay, great. So there is that. What we have to be very careful about, and this is one of the reasons why I say your claims adjuster can't necessarily be the expert on claims handling, is because even though they may have the same degrees that I do, or the same education, or the same background, or the same learning experience that I do, is that I have been trained on what I can and can't say. For example, and this is still completely bizarre to me, and I will argue it to my dying breath in a courtroom on record, like I am right now, being recorded, is that according to attorneys and the judge, adjusters cannot interpret coverage. Like, we can't make a coverage determination. And I'm like, that is literally our job.
Literally the job.
Literally, our job is to take the facts, apply coverage, and interpret how coverage is going to literally. But I have to be very careful the way that I say it, especially when I'm writing it. And sometimes it's really hard when you're writing a report. But I cannot say the adjuster did the coverage interpretation correctly, or I'm interpreting this thing correctly, blah, blah, blah. And as another little side story, I wrote a report and I was referencing, it happened to be Colorado. I was referencing the Colorado Unfair Claim Settlement Practices Act. And I said, well, the insurer violated this particular law. Well, that was a quote, legal opinion, end quote. And since I'm not an attorney, half of my report got thrown out,
Yeah.
even though it deals with claims. And
Mhm.
and that's literally, I mean, it's like again, we literally go back to the law. I'm not interpreting the law. That's
Yeah.
literally the law. I mean, that's what we're supposed to be following. But that's what you would worry about and that's what I'm saying is if you pressurize your adjuster who you give what an hour and a half of training to before throwing them into a deposition or into the court in front of a jury, then they could be saying the wrong thing and the whole kit and caboodle unravel.
Yeah.
Whereas
And
allegedly I'm supposed to be trained for
And
these
I get
sorts of
it.
things.
Like it's very hard because adjusters are routinely exposed to things that are 100% in the lane of the legal field.
Yes.
And you may understand the law really well. And I know, like in the moments that I sat in that 30B6 rep
Mm,
spot, and I had to be deposed as the company representative and many bad faith, extra contractual litigation stuff. Um, I know that the attorneys that the defense counsel that I worked with always came to me and said, you all understand the coverage application to the claim circumstances much better than we do. So educate us on that and then help us to understand your reasoning as to how maybe precedent or law that in the state that you might have been handling claims, understand your reasoning. If you grasp an ability to be able to explain your reasoning for your decisions, it becomes much easier to travel in the lane that you need to travel in, right?
yeah.
But also know that you do get exposure to that kind of stuff, and it's okay to ask questions. And I will tell you, it made me a better adjuster by being that person who had to regularly be deposed, even on the files that I didn't have any direct handling on, because I could say, okay, yes, I understand this. I understand why the decision was made. I understand here's how how this decision was defended and everything. But I didn't step into the world of I know the exact statute and I can quote it chapter and verse here
Mm,
about, what an attorney would say about what
right.
happened here. And that's, I think those are the fine lines you got to learn to walk.
Yes. And it's very hard. And I love what you said about you know the way that we have to word things in the fine lines. And remember as an adjuster, again, we keep saying this, you don't know everything, which is fine. I mean, because you're human. I don't know everything as a quote expert end quote. And I have even taken some court cases where I am the expert witness and they have hired an expert, a construction expert or a plumbing expert or whatever when I'm reviewing the file and I've been asked in deposition, well, why did you think such and such or why did you write this in your report? And I said I deferred to the expert. Like I deferred to the plumbing expert, I deferred to X expert or whatever. Of course, side note, also side story, one of the fun little things that I did get asked when I had made some opinion about a plumbing thing and they said, well, are you a plumber? And I said, no. And they said, how much plumbing experience do you have? And I'm like, I like did quite a bit of plumbing. Like I've replaced a toilet and I've done this and I've done that because my dad didn't want me to be, taken advantage of by plumbers. So, I mean,
Mhm.
I've, I've I've done a lot, but that doesn't make me a plumbing expert. I mean, that's the difference. So can I say this doesn't make sense? Yes, that's my common sense. But I have to defer to the experts. I can say that doesn't make sense, and so did the plumber also said that.
So I think what you hit on there is you had to know when you were out of your depth,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You're not a plumbing expert, but you have some common sense knowledge of things that you've been taught, and you know when something might be out of place or something might be wrong, but
right.
you wouldn't call yourself an expert about that. And I think one of the biggest things that we could also remind people of is like experts are necessary.
Yes, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, it's not bad, it's not expensive, and I know that in this hard market, everybody is wanting to save that loss adjustment expense, but let me tell you, there's two sides to that coin. There's the loss adjustment expense, and then there's the indemnity. And if you're cutting back the loss adjustment expense and overloading your adjusters, you're just making the adjusters pay or overpay on the indemnity side, and then your indemnity is going to be swinging all the way. And then, the board and all of them are going to be like, oh, we need to cut indemnity. We need to start doing, more research and all that kind of stuff. And that also leads to bad faith because then you're spending so much time in the investigation, then you're not paying claims. So it is a balancing act. It's two sides of a coin. You can't have one without the other.
Well, and I think I go back to what I think is like the perfect analogy because I'm a football fan. You're the quarterback, folks, right? And you have a lot of different players that are out there with you on the field. All right. They are going to have a different role throughout the process of your claim. And sometimes they might not actually even need to be involved,
True.
but knowing the moment that you need to bring them to be involved is the key skill set that you need to develop,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that takes time, but that also takes you being willing to step up and say, to your leader, to whoever, hey, by the way, I've got this kind of a circumstance. What recommendations do you have? I'm thinking this, but what recommendations do you have about who we might need to bring in because of these facts and circumstances in my research so far in the claim?
Right. I
And
love
I,
that.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
always felt like if I went to my boss with a plan that said, hey, I'm thinking this, and not just said, hey, tell me what I have to do here, they were always more willing to go, yeah, let me listen to what you have to say. Let us think about how we need to case manage this and whatever we need to do from this point out. But going to them with a plan instead of,
I don't know
uh,
what to do. Yeah.
tell me
Throwing
what
your hands up.
you're
Hmm.
throwing your hands up, which I get. Like if you're new, some of the time you don't know, but go to the people who might in your team who might know and get some recommendations from them
Right.
and then say, here's the coverage I'm looking at.
Hmm.
Here's what I don't understand about it. And I don't have the expertise to be able to figure that out. And with these facts that are coming in the door as we see them, and I think that some of that's muddled and gray and
Hmm.
mucky and not really what happened,
Yes.
recognizing that is your biggest and most powerful skill set that you can have.
Absolutely. And I do think that it takes a special skill and maybe even a little humility to say I don't know something.
Mhm.
And one of the biggest things that I have learned is people actually respect you more if you admit that you don't know something. And because I have started saying, you know what, I don't know, but I'm going to check and I will call you back. And I
Yeah,
put it on my calendar to make sure that I call them back at a certain time. I'll call you back by 4 p.m. today, or I'll call you first thing tomorrow morning. I put it on my calendar because I'm never going to remember. And that way I don't break my promise to that person and, and find out that answer, even if it's calling them back and saying, hey, I was trying to get in touch with my supervisor and I haven't been able to. Let me get back in touch with you in a couple of days. I'll let you know.
yeah.
And knowing when to do that, it's really hard because we all want to know things. But now you're an expert, and so now you know everything that we know, and we're going to go to our spelling test. um,
I know the words.
yes,
Spoliation.
spoliation. So what? Anything else you wanna add? You feel is important, Heather?
No, I think we got a really cool
I do too. I think we've got
episode.
an excellent episode. Now, speaking of excellent episodes, I have not confirmed yet, but I'm going to go ahead and tease it. So hopefully, because if I tease it, then it won't happen. But I'm going to go ahead and tease it. We're going to have Paul Miller on to discuss haunted claims and insurance. If you don't follow Paul on LinkedIn, do it now. I'll tell you to do it then. But he knows so much about insurance history, and his posts are terrific. Get it?
Was
Get it?
that play
Terror,
on some words?
terrorific. Get it? And we're talking about Halloween.
Oh, my favorite holiday.
Mine too, because it's like you get candy, you get dressed up, you get to be with friends, you don't have to deal with family. Eh. So it's like the best.
Definitely.
Absolutely. So we will see you in 2 weeks.
Let's do it.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Art of Adjusting podcast, where we talk about life as an insurance adjuster.
If you enjoyed this podcast or this episode, please give us 5 stars and a review. It does help the algorithm pick us up.
Hit that subscribe button real quick and tell all of your adjuster friends to check this out as well. For independent adjusting services, go to www.autin.claims. And for anyone interested in working as an independent liability adjuster, go to the Contact Us tab to join our roster.
In the meantime, you can contact me at theartofadjusting.com for consulting and training purposes.